Ever wondered what happens when you mix Midwestern charm with, like, the absolutely wild world of the internet?
It's an interesting thought, right?
It is. And, well, you've been digging into this online creative hub we keep hearing about.
Midwest Coast.
Yeah, Midwest Coast. So today, we're diving into a whole stack of their latest forum posts. Get ready for, well, everything. Movie reviews, tech talk, even a bit of avant-garde music.
Sounds like an eclectic mix, almost like that digital town square we were talking about last week. Remember Chad and his, shall we say, fondness for all things horror?
Oh, how could I forget? His movie reviews are legendary. What's he been watching lately? Anything that's going to give me nightmares.
Well, he seems very excited about Terrifier 3, calls it the goriest, most sinister one yet, which, knowing Chad...
That's saying something.
Right. He even joked that if the over-the-top gore doesn't make you laugh, the unsettling vibe will definitely keep you up at night.
Oh man, he had me a gory. I love a good dark horror comedy. Knowing Chad, it probably involves some interesting special effects.
You know him too well. But it wasn't all blood and guts for our resident horror aficionado. He also dove into a classic Salem's Lot, both the 1979 original and the 2024 remake.
2 vampire flicks in one sitting. Now that's dedication. Did he have a favorite?
He actually recommends Midnight Mass over both of them. Apparently, Salem's Lot felt a bit drawn out, even for his vampire-loving heart.
Wow, that's saying something. What else is on his watch list? Anything we should check out?
Oh, absolutely. He watched this indie film, Azrael. Describes it as a blend of Ready or Not and The Road, but with zombies. Oh, and apparently it's almost entirely dialogue-free.
A near-silent zombie road trip movie. Okay, now I have to see that. So we've got gore, vampires, zombie road trips. Please tell me he watched something that won't give us nightmares.
Don't worry, he did venture outside the crypt. He also watched The Hitcher from 1986 and Society from 89, though he wasn't super impressed by The Hitcher.
It's funny how some of those cult classics don't always hold up over time, you know?
I know, right?
Did Society fare any better?
Much better. He called it a must-watch, even went as far as to quote the tagline, "The rich are different." Very different.
Ominous. Okay, Chad's movie marathon sounds like quite the ride. But speaking of things that might give us nightmares, let's talk about TJ's posts on Tesla and SpaceX.
Oh, from cinematic thrills to technological marvels.
It's amazing how quickly things move on Midwest Coast. But before we dive into spaceships and robots, did I mention we also have a stack of posts from Nigel P. Snodgrass? You know, Midwest Coast's newest resident and resident cynic.
Oh, this I've got to hear. Last I heard, he was complaining about the lack of authentic artisan cheese shops in the Midwest. I cannot wait to hear what he thinks about AI and space travel.
Oh, it's going to be good. But first, let's unpack TJ's adventures in the land of Tesla and Elon Musk. He starts by breaking down Tesla's We Robot event. And this is where the future gets really exciting.
And maybe a little scary.
Maybe a little scary.
From what I've read, even TJ, who, let's be honest, is pretty skeptical about all things Elon Musk, seemed impressed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, where do we even begin? Self-driving taxis, robot trucks. It's like something straight out of a sci-fi film, except it's actually happening.
Well, he starts with the cybercab, Tesla's big idea for the future of, well, taxis, I guess.
Right. So no more awkward small talk with the driver, just like pure autonomous transportation.
Yeah, exactly. Elon Musk actually called it, get this, individualized mass transit.
Oh, okay.
And he claims it could make getting around crazy cheap, like way cheaper than Uber, even cheaper than public transport.
Wow. Okay, now that is interesting, especially if you live in a city. And then there's the robo-van. Am I picturing like a giant robot butler on wheels?
Not quite a butler, but yeah, it's definitely big. Think like a futuristic train car that can haul a ton of cargo or even like 20 passengers.
Autonomously, of course.
Yeah, totally. And just like the Cybercab, it's supposed to be ridiculously cost effective.
Okay, so we've got self-driving taxis and super efficient cargo transport. What's next? Flying cars.
Well, not quite flying cars, but TJ did mention that upcoming SpaceX Starship test flight, which is, let's be real, pretty much straight out of science fiction.
Now, to get a sense of how big Starship is, let's start with the average size human, which is about 2 meters high. Towering over our average human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket, with the payload fairing attached, is double the size of the Millennium Falcon, standing at 70 meters. And nearly twice the size of that is the fully integrated Starship at 121 meters tall. The ship itself is about 50 meters tall, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands about 71 meters.
Best words you could possibly hear 20 seconds away from liftoff.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Vehicles pitching downrange.
Dude, that thing is scary.
Still see it up behind me. That is one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen in my entire life. Coming up on hot staging next.
Ship engine
There's
startup.
most engines cut off.
Stage separation. Booster
Stage separation. Hot stage separation confirmed. But in 3 phases, we're landing 13 engines, burn off all of that velocity. Oh, we can see it coming down through the plume.
That's incredible.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch.
And I ignite 13 of those Raptor engines, and this view is incredible right now.
That thing's 236 miles.
You can see how fast this vehicle is moving on the left-hand screen.
Landing burn.
13 engines.
Ignited. We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks now in view.
Megadilla has popped the booster.
Insane. It's not the thing in the middle of that shot.
This is absolutely insane. On the first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the Super Heavy booster back at the launch tower.
What an incredible view!
Are you kidding me?
I mean, that's like history being made. Crazy.
It's like every other day there's something mind-blowingly futuristic happening.
I know, it's a lot. But going back to TJ, he actually makes this really interesting connection between the Starship and Tesla's humanoid robot, Optimus.
Oh, you mean the one that Elon Musk says will be able to, and I quote, do anything you want. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I'm a little wary myself, honestly. But TJ's point is that the Starship, even with all of its impressive tech, it's still just like a thing humans designed and built. But Optimus, that represents something way more radical, you know?
The potential for, like, true artificial intelligence.
Exactly. The Starship might take us to Mars someday, but Optimus, that could completely change how we live and work right here, right now.
It's like we're living in a sci-fi novel, isn't it? One minute we're shooting cars into space, the next we're talking about robots that do our chores and are our friends.
That last part still freaks me out a little bit, not gonna lie. Not sure I'm ready for a robot buddy just yet.
Me neither. But it does make you think, where does it all end?
Honestly, I don't think anyone knows the answer to that yet. But it's definitely exciting to see what we're capable of, you know?
Absolutely. And speaking of human achievement, let's not forget about Nigel P. Snodgrass and his, shall we say, unique brand of cultural commentary. I'm dying to know what he makes of all this AI and space exploration stuff.
Oh, I'm sure he has thoughts. The last time we checked in, you were about to fill us in on how he's adjusting to his new role at Midwest Coast.
Oh, yeah. Okay, get ready for this, because this is where things get really wild. Remember how Nigel was always going on and on about Midwest Coast being, well, a haven for unrefined tastes?
How could we forget? He once wrote an entire issue of the pretentious Hipsters Weekly dedicated to, like, analyzing the semiotics of cargo shorts in the Midwest.
The best part is, it seems like Midwest Coast decided to just roll with it. They actually acquired Nigel's publication.
Wait, seriously, they brought the hipster to the heartland. That is amazing.
Right. Nigel, of course, sees it as some sort of, like, hostile cultural takeover, a chance to, quote, infuse the Midwest with some much-needed nuance.
The irony. I can only imagine what the Midwest Coast regulars are making of all this.
It seems to be a mix of amusement, confusion, and maybe even a bit of begrudging respect.
It's like the ultimate clash of cultures. The cynics versus the optimists, the avant-garde versus the Midwest.
Right. It's that age-old question, can opposites really attract? Or is this a recipe for disaster?
I guess only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, with Nigel at the helm, the pretentious Hipsters Weekly is about to get a whole lot more interesting.
And can you imagine the content he's going to make for Midwest Coast? Like, I can already picture his scathing review of some local pie shop. The crust, while flaky, lacked the existential angst I've come to expect from a truly transcendent pastry.
Oh, 100%. It's going to be a wild ride. But speaking of wild rides, we haven't even gotten to Crystal Castles yet. Nigel's take on their second album, that sounds like a roller coaster of emotions.
Oh, it totally is. Ready to dive into some abrasive transcendence?
Bring on the sublime torment.
So, Nigel's review of Crystal Castles, I don't even know where to start. It's like he went headfirst into this, like, vortex of their sound and came back a changed man.
He definitely did not skimp on the colorful descriptions. Abrasive, transcendent, nihilistic, chaotic. It's like he threw every intense adjective he could think of at the page.
Well, that's our Nigel. But there's always a method to his madness, you know. He calls it a masterpiece, but then says the word felt, and I quote, too mundane for something so sublimely tormented.
Only Nigel can make a compliment sound like an insult and a hug at the same time.
Right. But what I find so interesting is how he connects the music to these bigger ideas. Like, he talks about how Crystal Castles captures this feeling of living in a world that's like constantly on edge, this world where technology and anxiety are just like completely intertwined.
It's like he sees their music as like the soundtrack to all the stuff we were just talking about.
Yeah.
The anxieties about AI, the future, our place in it all.
Yeah, exactly. He even compares their sound, which can be pretty abrasive, to the experience of like living in the digital age. The information overload, the constant pressure to be connected, the fear of missing out.
Huh. I hadn't thought about it like that before, but I get it. He even compares the way Ethan Kath produces their music to being overwhelmed by technology, all those blips and glitches and distorted vocals.
It's unsettling and kind of beautiful at the same time, you know?
Totally.
And don't even get me started on his analysis of the lyrics. He goes deep on these themes of alienation and disillusionment and just like the search for meaning in a world that often feels pretty meaningless.
Heavy stuff. Did you have any favorite tracks?
Oh yeah, he lists a bunch. Fainting Spells, Celestica, Doe Deer, Baptism. He seems to be drawn to the ones that combine those moments of like ethereal beauty with these bursts of almost violent energy.
That's Crystal Castles for you. That back and forth between light and dark, beautiful and chaotic.
Right. There is one track he calls out, but not in a good way, not in love. It actually features Robert Smith from The Cure.
Oh, wow, really? I'm surprised. What didn't he like about it?
He thought Robert Smith's vocals, which are obviously amazing, but they're very melodic, and Nigel felt like they kind of clashed with the raw energy of Crystal Castles. He even said the collaboration diluted their beautiful chaos.
Classic Nigel. Only he could find a way to critique a Robert Smith collab. But you got me curious. I have to hear it now.
You definitely should. It's a cool track, even if it's not peak abrasive transcendence, I guess. But you know, it's funny. As much as Nigel seems to, like, revel in their darkness, there's a part of me that thinks he also finds a weird sort of hope in their music.
Hope in all that chaos.
I know, right? But it's like, by confronting all the darkness head on, by acknowledging all the anxieties and uncertainty in the world, Crystal Castles kind of allows you to just keep moving forward. Like they're saying, yeah, it's messy and chaotic out there, but there's beauty in the chaos too.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it. And it does make you think, maybe Nigel's move to Midwest Coast isn't so strange after all.
Maybe he sees that same kind of hope in their community.
A community that embraces AI breakthroughs and avant-garde music and, you know, Midwestern potlucks all in one place.
It's a wild combination for sure. Kind of like this deep dive.
Tell me about it. We've gone from AI that can decipher proteins to spaceships, from zombie road trips to the beauty of, well, chaotic music. Midwest Coast is quite the place.
It really is. It reminds you that the internet, even with all its issues, can still be this place of like incredible discovery and connection. And yeah, maybe even a little hope.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And maybe go listen to some Crystal Castles. Who knows? Maybe we'll discover a new appreciation for a little abrasive transcendence.
I'm game if you are.
Now it is time for the Pretentious Hipsters Weekly Review with Nigel P. Snodgrass.
Charli xcx, the newly anointed queen of pop rebellion and sonic subversion. and Brat Summer, a season awash in lime green, TikTok anthems, and Brat royalty, with Charli xcx ruling the scene as our patron saint of glitter-streaked chaos. She's the epitome of if chaos were a person in a world that insists on order. But we wouldn't have it any other way. Now, would we? While some may be under the illusion that she's merely riding the wave of trendy irreverence, Charli's disarrayed artistry has a delightful way of crashing through conventional pop's sandcastles with all the delicacy of a lime green tsunami. Her recent album, Brat, and now the remix extravaganza, Brat and It's Completely Different, but also still Brat, is a testament to the fact that Charli xcx has fully embraced her role as the ringleader of the bratty circus that is modern pop. She's less interested in the perfectly posed selfie and more in the garish, mascara-smeared snapshots of a night gone wrong. One can't help but admire the brazenness. What truly sets Charli xcx apart is her relentless disregard for what is supposed to be cool by mainstream standards. Over the years, Charli has shuffled across genres like some kind of pop-punk magpie, plucking influences from hyperpop, electroclash, and even the faintest wisps of new wave, all while maintaining a sneer that could cut glass. Her aesthetic is a mix of 90s rave culture, digital overload, and a sort of bratty existentialism that says, yes, I care, but only about what I choose to care about. It's not merely fashion or sound, it's an ethos, a rebellion against curated perfection. That, I dare say, is the true genius of Charli xcx. Brat and its remix iteration only further cement Charli xcx's standing as the unwashed queen of the pop underground. She's got a knack for weaving together artists who have no business collaborating, resulting in a beautiful mess that only she could curate. But perhaps that's the magic of Charli xcx. She's always a little too much, and yet somehow just enough. She leaves you wanting more while simultaneously making you wonder if you've already had too much. And as the seasons change, as we watch the leaves fall, one must ponder. Is this the dawn of Brat autumn, or are we witnessing the fall of Brat? Only time will tell, but for now, Charli xcx invites us to keep the Brat spirit alive, even as the sun sets on those riotous summer days. And frankly, I'd take her as the harbinger of autumn any day over the predictably cozy pumpkin spice. So let the Brat reign continue.
Chapter 2. The Mist. Aria woke to the soft chime of her alarm, the room's colour once again shifting in the early morning light. She stretched, feeling the familiar stiffness in her muscles, which are becoming more noticeable to her every year. Nixie was aimlessly moving about the room before stopping and turning towards her. "Morning, Nixie," Aria sighed, her voice groggy as it continued its journey across the room to retrieve her morning tea. She watched the robot move, a small smile tugging at her lips. There was something endearing about Nixie's clunky demeanour, its outdated design, something almost human in the way it carried out its simple routines. She took the steaming cup from Nixie, savouring the warmth for a moment before setting it down and ordering her ride. A few minutes later, Aria began her workday routine much as she always did, gliding through the orderly streets of the city, alone in an autonomous cab, the world outside feeling like a well-rehearsed simulation. The cab moved with such silent precision that even its electric motor was barely perceptible, leaving the strains of music from the early millennium in her earpiece to fill the space, a taste she picked up from her grandfather and his father before him. It was an anchor to simpler times, something that relaxed her. She leaned her head against the cool glass, her gaze on the cityscape rushing past, the sculpted greenery that climbed the facades of glass towers, the meticulously maintained pathways that wove between them. This was her morning ritual on workdays, a soft cocoon of sound that kept the world at bay. The city beyond the window was beautiful, a marvel of human engineering, an intricate ballet of glass and greenery, but Aria remained apart from it, tethered to the melodies of the past, a comforting shield against the looming isolation of the workday. The cab slowed to a halt in front of the World Space Agency Warp Drive Research Facility, a monolithic structure of steel and glass, its clean lines and imposing height, a testament to technological mastery. Over 30 years now, this building has stood, once a NASA facility, until the governments of the developed world combined space agencies and resources, rebranding it to WSA a few years back. Aria stepped out, taking a moment to glance up at the towering building before heading inside. The entrance swallowed her whole, the glass doors wisping shut behind her as the sounds of her music faded. Here, the warmth of nostalgia was replaced by the cool efficiency of the facility, a world of gleaming metal, humming drones, and the steady, rhythmic movement of automated systems. Towering robots moved along the far end of the vast hall, their limbs extending and retracting with mechanical grace, each performing its task with unerring precision, their motions almost hypnotic in their mechanical choreography. Aria walked past them, her footsteps barely audible on the polished floor as she approached her workspace. She slipped into her mechanic's uniform, the familiar fabric hugging her frame, as if she were transforming into just another cog in this massive machine, blending seamlessly into the machinery that defined her days. She belonged here, yet the feeling gnawed at her. This was not the kind of belonging she yearned for. Her workspace was a blend of chaos and control, with tools meticulously arranged in their designated places, surrounded by the organized disorder of half-dismantled drones and machines waiting for her skilled hands to breathe life back into them. Aria immersed herself in her tasks, her hands moving with practiced precision as she examined the first malfunctioning unit of the day. She worked in silence, her fingers deftly navigating wires and connections, each adjustment made with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. A drone's metal casing resisted her efforts. Its worn latches rusted stubbornly into place, as if it had grown weary of being opened and repaired over and over again. Aria frowned, her brow furrowing in concentration, and after a moment of struggle, she pried it open with a firm twist. The intricate tangle of wires within lay exposed, the fault almost immediately obvious. She allowed herself a small smile, a flicker of satisfaction at a job well done, a small victory that was hers alone, one that the automated systems around her would never understand. As the day wore on, a shrill alert flashed across her work tablet, the sudden sound pulling her out of her focused rhythm. Aria glanced at the screen, her eyes narrowing as she read the details of the reported malfunction. Something had gone wrong at one of the facility's outer zones, an area rarely touched, mostly filled with older systems that had been deemed too expensive to upgrade, but still functional enough not to be discarded. She made her way through the facility, her boots echoing off the cold floors as she approached the designated zone. The sight that greeted her was unexpected, a series of older systems, once orderly and pristine, now sputtering erratically. Aria frowned, kneeling beside the nearest unit, her eyes scanning the exterior for signs of damage. She traced the lines of wiring and conduits, her fingers moving with practiced ease as she felt for loose connections or signs of corrosion, the tactile sensation grounding her in the present moment. After a few minutes, she found the culprit, an old relay switch, worn and battered, its casing cracked and wires partially exposed like tired veins barely holding on. It was a simple fix, but it reminded her of how much of the facility relied on these outdated systems. She sighed, carefully replacing the part and watching as the machine slowly sputtered back to life, its motions evening out until it hummed steadily once again. With the malfunction resolved, Aria took her break, slipping into the facility's small break room. She poured herself a cup of lukewarm tea, her eyes drifting to the newsfeed displayed on the wall, endless advertisements amidst the reports of advancements and upgrades, the ceaseless march of progress. She sighed, taking a seat at the edge of the room when a voice broke her thoughts. "Hey, Aria," Kieran called, her tone bright as she slid into the seat across from her. Kiran was younger, her enthusiasm evident in her every movement. She worked in system management, handling the facility's automation routines, a coveted job at the facility. Her smile was polished, her uniform crisp. "Hey," Aria replied, her own smile polite but guarded. "Did you hear about the new upgrades coming in?" Kiran asked, her voice filled with excitement. "They're talking about streamlining the shield casing assembly automation process. It's going to be amazing. We have been working out the details for months. 7 new humanoid assembly droids. It's going to save us hours on each unit. It's going to be a lot of more work for me when it rolls out, but I might even be getting a promotion from it. At least I really hope so." Aria nodded, her eyes on her tea. "That's great, Kiran," she said, her tone even, though there was a quiet tension beneath her words, a reminder of the divide between them. Kiran's role was clean, glamorous, part of the future the city embraced. Aria's was hands-on, necessary, but hardly celebrated. She was a remnant of a world that had moved on, one of the last people still needed to work with her hands in a world that preferred things untouched by them. The rest of the workday passed uneventfully, as most days did. She finished her tasks, her body aching with the exhaustion once more. As she left the facility, she ordered another cab, its headlights cutting through the early evening mist as it pulled up to the curb. She climbed inside, the door sealing shut with a quiet hiss. The ride home was silent, the cab's interior sterile, the glass separating her from the world beyond. The streets blurred past, their perfection almost unsettling in its flawlessness. She watched as the city moved around her, the lights reflecting off the rain-slicked roads, and an inexplicable restlessness settled over her. Without thinking, she tapped the console, ordering the cab to stop. The door opened and Aria stepped out, the chill of the night air biting into her skin. Misty rain filled the city in a gentle haze, as it always did on Mondays, feeding the plant life integrated in every gap between the neon screens, glass and chrome constantly surrounding her. She pulled her hood up, tucking her hands into her pockets as she began to walk, her boots tapping softly against the wet pavement, echoing through the empty streets like a distant heartbeat. The world around her wrapped in a damp quiet that still felt more alive and real than anything she'd experienced that day. She breathed deeply, savouring the coolness of the air, her footsteps slow as she made her way through the city. The buildings rose around her, their glass facades reflecting the glow of the streetlights and advertisement screens, and the pavements beneath her feet shone with a silvery sheen. She stopped, staring downward, her reflection shimmering in the rain-soaked pavement beneath her. She stayed there, lost in thought, the world around her fading into a muted blur until the chill of the night seeped in, sending a shiver down her spine and breaking her trance. She chuckled quietly to herself, shaking her head as she resumed her walk, scattered thoughts still dancing inside her hood, just like the mist around the city.
We're now up to speed on the latest forum posts, got Nigel's take on Brat Summer, and just heard Chapter 2 of our story about Aria. You can get featured on next week's episode by posting to our forum or leave a comment with suggestions for Aria's story. We'll feed it to the AI to do the work, and then we'll take credit. While you're posting to the forum on mwcoast.com, check out our store. We have a few new shirt designs, and they are all currently on sale. Before we go, let's learn a little bit about Myspace.
In the early 2000s, the digital landscape was vastly different from what we know today. Myspace emerged as a titan in this brave new world, a social media king before the age of Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Imagine a time when the internet was less polished, more experimental. Myspace, founded in 2003, was a haven for individuality. It allowed users to customize their profiles with unique layouts, music and personal flair. It was a canvas for self-expression, where each profile was a digital fingerprint. For millions, Myspace was the introduction to social networking. It was a place where friendships were forged, bands were discovered, and creativity flowed freely. Bands like Arctic Monkeys and Owl City owe their initial success to the platform. Myspace was the epicenter of the web's burgeoning music scene. At its peak, MySpace boasted over 100 million users. It was the most visited website in the United States, surpassing even Google. But as with many great empires, MySpace's reign was not to last. The seeds of its downfall were sown in its very success. The platform became cluttered, profiles overloaded with animations, auto-playing music, and countless ads. Users began to crave a cleaner, more streamlined experience. Enter Facebook. With its simple, user-friendly design, Facebook quickly gained traction. By 2008, it had surpassed MySpace in user numbers. The shift was swift and decisive, with MySpace struggling to keep up. Efforts to revitalize MySpace were made, but the magic had been lost. The platform shifted its focus to music and entertainment, yet it never regained its former glory. Today, MySpace is but a relic, a reminder of a different era of the internet. Its legacy, however, endures. MySpace laid the groundwork for the social media giants that dominate our world today. So the next time you scroll through your feed, remember the digital pioneers who paved the way. MySpace may have fallen from grace, but its impact on the internet is undeniable. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. Until next time, stay curious.